These 5 chains serve millions of people every single day. This is how they built their empires. Number 5, McDonald's. Founded in 1940, two brothers, Richard and Maurice McDonald, opened a small barbecue restaurant in San Bernardino, California. At first, it was nothing special, but in 1948, they completely redesigned everything. They stopped trying to make an average version of every food item. Instead, they reduced the menu to hamburgers, French fries, and milkshakes. Their goal was to create a system that was fast, simple, and delicious. They called it the Speedy Service System. It was a brilliant idea. One of the biggest turning points for the brand came in 1954. A milkshake machine salesman named Ray Kroc visited the restaurant because he wanted to understand why they needed 8 milkshake mixers. That visit changed the future. Kroc became their franchise representative, and in 1955, he opened his own McDonald's restaurant in Des Plaines, Illinois. He was an incredibly visionary businessman. Everything was running perfectly, and then he made his move. In 1961, he bought the McDonald brothers out completely for $2.7 million. Almost nobody realized it at the time, but Kroc was building one of the most powerful franchise systems in history. He had a visionary mindset. To him, McDonald's wasn't just a food business, it was much more than that. Today, McDonald's has more than 43,000 restaurants across over 100 countries, serving around 70 million customers every day. They sell about 80 hamburgers every second. It has become one of the most iconic brands in the world. Number 4, KFC. Founded in 1952, Harlan Sanders was 62 years old and completely broke. At the time, he traveled across America in his car, trying to sell his fried chicken recipe to restaurant owners. He even slept in the back of his car while doing it. To him, the secret to success was simply to keep trying. Before this, he had already failed in more jobs than most people would ever dare to attempt. His Kentucky gas station business had actually been successful. At the roadside restaurant there, he served fried chicken to travelers. He was becoming famous throughout the region. Then a new highway was built that bypassed his location. At 62 years old, he had nothing left to lose. He decided to try one final time, his last dance. He got into his car and began visiting restaurants one by one. He was rejected more than 1,000 times. Then everything suddenly changed. Restaurant owners loved his recipe, and it quickly became famous. By 1963, there were 600 KFC franchise locations across the United States. He was now 73 years old. He was simply too old to manage everything. Success had finally arrived, but it almost felt too late. In 1964, he sold the entire business for $2 million. The new owners belonged to a younger generation and managed the company much more aggressively. Just 2 years after the acquisition, they took the company public. By 1970, KFC operated more than 30,000 restaurants across over 145 countries. The Colonel's face still remains on the logo as a lasting reminder. He restarted his life at the age of 62. Very few people would have had the courage to do that. Number 3, Subway. Founded in 1965. Fred DeLuca was just 17 years old and needed money to pay for college. He didn't have huge expectations. While talking with a family friend named Peter Buck, he asked for advice. Buck was a nuclear physicist with a PhD. His advice was surprisingly simple. He gave DeLuca $1,000 and suggested opening a sandwich shop. That summer, they opened a small store in Bridgeport, Connecticut called Pete's Super Submarines. On the very first day, they sold 312 sandwiches. Everything started off great. Then things quickly got out of control. One store was no longer enough. They opened a second, then a third. By 1974, they had 16 stores across Connecticut, and they realized they could never expand fast enough through company-owned locations alone. So they switched to the franchise model. That smart decision transformed them from a regional sandwich shop into the largest restaurant chain in the world. Their success came from thinking simply. They stayed away from unnecessary complexity. That simple mindset put them ahead of everyone else. At its peak, Subway operated more than 44,000 restaurants worldwide. That was even more than McDonald's. In 2002, it became the largest fast food chain in the United States by number of locations. Fred DeLuca passed away from leukemia in 2015 at the age of 67. In 2024, the company was sold to the private equity firm Roark Capital for $9.55 billion. Today, Subway still operates more than 37,000 restaurants across over 100 countries. A billion-dollar business that began because a teenager needed money for college. Number 2. Burger King. Founded in 1953. A man named Keith Kramer traveled to California to study the McDonald's brothers restaurant. After completing his research, he returned to Jacksonville, Florida. Using what he had learned, he opened his own version. The original name was Insta Burger King. Its selling point was simple. Instead of frying hamburgers, they cooked them over an open flame. That was the difference. The company soon ran into financial trouble. In 1959, two franchise owners from Miami, James McLamore and David Edgerton, bought the struggling company and renamed it Burger King. They replaced the original cooking equipment with their own flame broiler design. In 1957, they introduced the Whopper. The flame-grilled quarter-pound burger sold for just 37 cents and became one of the most famous sandwiches in fast food history. It became a true legend. By 1967, Burger King had grown to more than 250 restaurants and was sold to Pillsbury Company. Over the next 50 years, the company changed ownership several times. It passed through companies including Grand Metropolitan, Diageo, TPG Capital, and eventually the Brazilian investment firm 3G Capital in 2010. In 2014, 3G merged Burger King with the Canadian coffee chain Tim Hortons under a new parent company called Restaurant Brands International. Today, Burger King operates around 20,000 restaurants across more than 100 countries. For over 70 years, it has remained firmly in second place, always behind McDonald's, but always just one step behind. Number 1. Domino's. Founded in 1960, Tom Monahan grew up in an orphanage. He had no family. He spent difficult years at a Catholic children's home in Michigan. Later, he joined the U.S. Marine Corps and tried to attend college. In 1960, his brother Jim suggested that they buy a small, struggling pizza shop in Ypsilanti, Michigan called Dominick's. They paid a $500 down payment and borrowed the rest. At first, business was unstable. 8 months later, Jim decided to quit. He made up his mind and gave his share to Tom. Tom was left alone with almost no money and a failing pizza business. He focused on one thing only: fast delivery. At the time, pizza delivery was notoriously slow. Monahan built the entire business around getting pizza to customers' doors as quickly as possible. He renamed the company Domino's and began franchising in the mid-1960s. In 1985 alone, the company opened 954 new stores. At the time, it was the fastest expansion ever achieved by a restaurant chain. In the late 1980s, Domino's introduced its famous 30-minute delivery guarantee. If the pizza arrived late, it was free. The campaign fueled massive growth. It became one of the most famous marketing campaigns in the world. However, the company later abandoned the guarantee because of lawsuits related to delivery accidents. Domino's reinvented itself once again. In 2009, the company openly admitted that its pizza recipe was not good enough. It released commercials showing executives eating the old pizza and calling it mediocre. Then it created an entirely new recipe. Sales increased dramatically. Today, Domino's operates more than 20,000 stores across over 90 countries and generates roughly $18 billion in global sales. A true global giant. All 5 of these chains became worldwide brands. They all had something in common. None of them gave up. None of them quit. And most importantly, all of them knew how to think simply. That single-minded focus is what separates a restaurant from an empire. Subscribe. This channel has hundreds more stories to tell. Thanks for watching.